So we're going to take a quick look at a few more of the specifics behind decision number 2, presidential help, and it's 1789, so this is one of the first big decisions President Washington had to make. Now, how will decisions be made as the executive, as president? Washington will interpret the wording of the Constitution in this way when it claims that as president, he may require the opinion, in writing, of the principal officer in each of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their respective offices. And that's the actual wording of it. And it's believed that it was James Madison who described the meetings, the actual physical meetings of these men as the president's cabinet, and thus the name stuck. So the phrase secretaries, that simply refers to advisors. And Washington really wanted to make sure that this cabinet was representative of the entire nation as a whole, not necessarily any one region. So the first cabinet is who you see on screen. And when it says first, second, third, that simply refers to when each of these, what are called executive departments, were created. Now, his first nomination was Alexander Hamilton for Secretary of the Treasury, and the Senate confirmed this within minutes. Now, technically, John Jay fulfilled the role of Secretary of State while Jefferson was en route from France, but Jefferson was actually the first. And when you look at the image, they are presented in order. So we have, George Washington, the president, and then you see Secretary of War, Henry Knox, next to him. Standing up, we have Alexander Hamilton, and then next to Hamilton, we have Thomas Jefferson. So the War Department, the Treasury Department, and the State Department. War, pretty obvious. Treasury dealing with monetary policy, and State dealing with foreign policy. So you have Knox from Massachusetts, you have Hamilton from New York, you have Jefferson from Virginia. So you've got the Northeast, you have more of the middle states, and then you have the South, all represented. Now we've got another individual on screen. That would be Edmund Randolph of Virginia. He serves as the Attorney General, and Attorney General and Postmaster General, who runs the post office, they were kind of seen as lower tier positions. But all of them are under the banner of the executive branch, and that's a big difference from the articles. They're executive, not legislative. Now, Washington was always aware of, and sometimes he was embarrassed by, his lack of formal education, so he personally has no problem surrounding himself with individuals that are more talented and knowledgeable than himself. Now, as opposed to just setting the policy, Washington legitimately got opinions from his officers, and he would go from there. Now, when you look at the screen, you see John Adams, Vice President. Constitutionally, his only duty was to preside over the Senate and break ties when necessary. So Washington views him as a bit more legislative, and he didn't include him in cabinet meetings. Now, this doesn't mean he never took his advice, because he would rely on Adams as his presidency wore on, because Hamilton will eventually leave the cabinet, and Madison, who he took advice from early on, is actually going to go to the other political party. So that's what you need to know regarding presidential help.